There is a lot of feedback that
Is it from my end?
I don't. Let me mute myself and we can see. I can still hear it.
Oh.
How about now?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, better. Yeah.
That reduced the feedback or no?
Yeah. It
So I
did.
think it's my headphones. My headphones are not great.
Oh, bummer. Okay.
So I've already clicked go live. So if you go to my YouTube channel, the show will start with a countdown.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Instead of like logging into Eventbrite and all that fun stuff.
No, just go to the link I gave you and that should work. So I see here, I can see it on my phone. It's showing will go live in X amount of minutes.
So I'll just click on live stream.
Yeah, just click on, so when you go to my channel, you'll see this and you just click on that and that's it. Oh, so, yeah. Seven minutes and this goes live. Okay. Let me settle into a comfortable sitting position. I get very nervous right at the start. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, you're mute.
Sorry, I was saying that, is there a lag that I can see or rather hear?
Yes. They will, like right now or on the channel?
I'm not sure where it is coming from because I can see you at both places right now on Zoom as well as on YouTube channel, and I'm not sure which one is.
Yeah, there's a lag. But wait, you're seeing me on YouTube channel or you're just seeing the photo?
No, I can see you live on YouTube channel.
Oh, like this two screens are both available? Interesting. On mine, it shows that it'll go live soon.
Yeah. So it says it actually says that it actually,
yeah, it is live.
It says that it started streaming 2 minutes ago. Yes.
There's the lag.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 5 minutes we'll wait.
Yeah, it's funny because so what's happening for me is I can hear you twice.
Oh,
so
maybe you can turn off the volume on your YouTube.
On my YouTube, right? That's what I was thinking. Okay, can you talk now?
Yeah, how about now?
Yes, now it's only through Zoom. So I think I'll do that. I'm just wondering though if people can hear me. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, I'm sure they can because I tried it with my like from another account. I had just tried before doing this one and it worked.
yeah.
Let me go on YouTube and see if I can hear you. So Say something. Oh, wait, okay, this is not gonna work. Okay, let me try on my iPad. It's funny, all I see is a blank screen.
Oh, and by the way, people are able to hear us, just FYI.
Okay. Are they sending in messages?
Yeah. So I'm actually asking them if they can hear any lag or anything, and I'm going to wait for someone to respond. There are two people who are already here, and yeah.
Nice.
Oh, so okay, somebody's saying that Chetna is actually saying that no, I mean there is no lag from their side. So I guess that's good.
Yeah, that's good. What's funny is I don't see anything when I go here, so that's just, I don't know what's going on.
That's fine. This is pretty exciting for me because this thing, like YouTube Live, is I haven't ever attended these type of sessions. So this is like first. So I'm actually pretty excited. So
Yeah, I did
technical.
one last time, and with that time, it was just me. So I went directly live from the app,
Yeah.
and this time it was like, I tried it with Zoom once just to, do a test run, and it worked fine. So that was good. But yeah, on my own, like if I go to my YouTube channel, then I don't see anything. It's
Oh,
super
that's
weird.
funny. Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's coming from the same IP address. They're not showing it.
I have no idea.
Could be.
Okay, we have 4 minutes.
No, 1 minute, right? It's already 4:58.
Oh, I thought we said we'll start at 5:02.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Um, I think there are people still joining, so.
This is
Do you have any slides or anything that you want to like put up, or are you good?
No, I'm not going to put up slides because it's just added technical difficulty we'll have to deal with.
Well, yeah, fair point.
Yeah, but if you guys are live and you can hear us, drop in on the chat, say hi, tell us who you are, where you're from, what is it that you're looking for from this session, and it'll help both of us out.
Yeah.
Let's see any responses.
Not yet.
This is so weird. I don't know why.
I can see that there are 3 people watching.
See more people joining in. I see 10, but I still don't see our own video feed. Do you see us on the YouTube side?
Yeah.
Okay, so something's working.
I actually can't see the number of people joining, by the way. So
That is so weird. I can't see the video, but I can see people joining in. Maybe I'm sharing to the wrong screen or something. No.
I can see the chat, and so Chetana just responded that she's a CS grad student from New York, and she's looking for full-time opportunities at this point. So I can see,
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
yeah, I can see people, people chats and everything. I just can't see number of people.
Okay. Maybe by the end we'll figure out how many people came.
Yeah, so we have 1 minute. Let me know if you want to have, like, more number of people join, or do you want to get started?
We can wait. We can get started. I think that should be fine.
Okay. All right. All right then. Hi everyone. My name is Rujuta. I am a volunteer coordinator at Indian Women in Computing, also known as IWiC. So today, as part of our GHC virtual GHC series, we have Kajal, who is joining us today, and she actually has attended GHC as a student, as a speaker, and as a recruiter, I believe, right? And so she's a robotics engineer, and today she has, I know, tons of tips and tricks to share about interview prep and everything. All right, so I think I'm going to hand it off to Kajal. And as we were chatting a little bit earlier, if you can, if you want, you can leave your name, where you're from, and what you're trying to accomplish as part of this webinar in the chat. Feel free to ask questions. We will be taking pause after every few minutes, or after every, as logical break, to get some questions answered. So feel free to put your questions in the chat. All right, Kajal, you're up.
Thank you for such a lovely introduction. And as she mentioned, feel free to put your questions in the live chat at any time. She's monitoring the live chat and she will interrupt me and be like, hey, there's a question for you. And I'm very happy to answer that. Don't hold on to your questions, ask them away. I don't mind. So as she said, I am a roboticist and a YouTuber. So this is my YouTube channel. Feel free to check out some other videos. And today I'm going to be talking about Grasshopper and my insights as well as my experience at GHC. So I went back in 2017 as a student looking for robotics jobs, and I did land one through GHC. And then I went back in 2019 with another company of mine as a recruiter. So from this side of the table, I can tell you some of the common mistakes that people make and how you can avoid them. So on the agenda we have today starting is how GHC works. Now this is a common question, especially if you've not attended before. So GHC, a lot of things happen in parallel. GHC starts with the keynote speech, and at that time only keynote speech is going on and everything else has stopped. Once that gets over, then everything else starts in parallel. On one side you have your career booth, on one side you have your, what do you say, tracks and sessions and panels, and at each particular time frame, let's say 9 to 9:30 is a slot, there'll be tens of talks going on at the same time in different rooms. Now virtually, I'm guessing they will have links where you can sign up and attend that particular session. So if you're planning to attend some sessions along with career fair, make sure to plan it out. Because the thing is, if there are two sessions going on at the same time, you can't attend both of them. And a lot of times what happens is if you don't go prepared and there are 10 sessions going on, you don't know which one you want to attend. And you will lose time and you'll also get very overwhelmed. The same goes for career fair. I believe they have shared the schedule, but I don't think they've shared the companies yet. If they have, great. If not, go and see last year's company and see which companies are coming or possibly coming. Because most big companies, they will keep coming again and again and again, and having that list sort of helps you. Having a list of companies that you want to go for sure as a second tier and then third tier is great, because then you know exactly whom you want to go. So another thing that happens at the career fair is it's just like a career fair at university. There's a booth and everyone's standing in line and waiting for your turn to speak with a recruiter. Now virtually, I'm guessing they would have some sort of a line or some sort of rooms where you can join and get your turn. So either ways, make sure that that is something you are prepared for, that you'd have to wait for your turn. Another thing that also happens at GHC is networking events. So some of them are part of the schedule and you will see them. So for example, when I went in, I think 2018 or 2019, there was a Toyota Research Institute luncheon and you had to sign up beforehand. So make sure you sign up beforehand because they had limited seats. And through that, I was able to talk to some of the robotics engineers that were at Toyota Research Institute. Other than that, they have networking events after GHC, which is not part of GHC, but they do it together. So up until now, it used to be at different physical locations. I'm guessing they'll have something similar this time through Zoom meetings or some other webinar session or some other software. So keep an eye out for them. Companies usually post it on LinkedIn, Twitter, or sometimes they send it out to selected few people and then they share it with their friends. And do try and go to these networking events because it gives you an edge. So in my case, I actually got this offer through that networking at GHC. I had some interviews that I got through the career fair, but the one that I ended up with was the one that came through a networking event. I was just talking to someone and they were looking for a robotics software engineer. So they passed on my resume and I got an interview call. So the benefit of going to networking events is you get there's a higher chance you get to talk to an engineer or someone who is looking for hiring in that particular technical domain versus a recruiter. Recruiters are also great, but here's the problem with robotics. If it's a really large company, yeah, that is another thing I wanted to cover. At Grasshopper, don't just go for the robotics companies, also go for the big companies. They might not seem like they may have robotics, but then they have a small team of either robotics or machine learning or AI, wherever your interest spans. And then you can go talk to them. But then because it would be a small team in the big company, the recruiter might not be looking to hire for that position actively, or what happens, that particular recruiter doesn't know about that position. So with big companies, you will have tons of recruiters and all of them are hiring for different positions. Now, most of the positions that comprises most engineers would be very easy. So for example, if you were to go for Amazon, so AWS is something that they hire a lot for, or data science, data engineers. Now these roles are very common and very popular and they are hiring in larger numbers for that. So all recruiters might know about it. But for robotics, if it's a small team and they're only looking to hire 2 or 3 people, then they might not know about it. But still, talk to the recruiter and make sure that that is what you are going for. However, with robotics being such a niche, networking gives you an edge over just the career fair. But both ways will get you interviews and offers, so try both of them. Any questions? Okay. So now what happens at career fair? As I mentioned, that you have to wait for your turn to speak. And once you get your turn to speak, yeah.
So Chetna is saying that she tried to get through the live stream through Eventbrite and she clicked that link. It still shows that there are 14 people waiting. So I think looks like
she can't hear us?
No, she's able to. It sounds like there is some mix up with the link.
Okay.
And there is the link in the Eventbrite is not basically taking people to this, it sounds like.
Okay, let me just make sure everything I can do. Yeah, to me, it shows live now. So if someone's having trouble, see if they can go to my YouTube channel and then click on the video and hopefully that'll help. Live now. So if someone's having yeah, so if you can put it in the chat, or let's see if I can put it in the chat. I am so sorry about this, guys. Oh, someone just sent the correct link. Thank you so much. I don't know why there's a mix up. I'm really, really sorry. Let's try and see if we can get over it and keep going. If again people find problems, just let us know and we'll do our best to get this working. All right. So as I was saying, when you talk to recruiters, now this is very important. When I went as a recruiter, I realized this mistake. Firstly, tell your name and then tell what you're looking for. So example, if you're looking for full-time positions or internships, say it right off the bat. Because here's what happens. You give me your resume and you start talking about your experience, or you go on to talk about your elevator pitch. But if I don't know where you are at, I can't judge you. So if you're a full-time position, then I am going to judge you a bit more on a higher standards. But if you're an intern, my standards would be a little lower because we are expecting you to not know everything already. So there's that difference. And for that reason, you should let them know beforehand what you want. Another thing you should mention is your domain. So like I said, right, big companies, they may have a small robotics department, but they might not have it all around. So make sure to tell that to your recruiter. So here's what happened with me at one of the companies at GHC. I told them right off the bat that, hey, I'm looking for a robotics role. And they were like, okay, wait, hold on a second. I don't know much about this, but I know we have an engineer come here today who is in that department. So then they were able to bring that person. They told me that come back after 2 hours and then you can talk to this person directly. And then that way, when that person came back, I was there and I was speaking directly to the engineer who was looking to hire for robotics. So that way, the things that I was telling about, that person knew where I stand, what my skills are, and they were able to understand the projects I'm talking about. So make sure to tell your recruiters right off the bat that I'm interested in robotics. Now, if they're aware of the position and all the description, they will talk to you accordingly. But if they don't know about it and they know someone else who's going to be talking to you about that, they will make sure to connect you. But if you've already said everything and then in the end you mention it, it becomes a little difficult for them to go back through the whole thing. And yes, please have a pitch prepared. So the way I do it is I always talk about my best project first. So whenever you're talking, after you've mentioned your name, what you're looking for, when you're graduating, and the domain, which is robotics, or you can even mention subfields like perception, machine learning, navigation, path planning, whatever it is. After that, make sure to start with your pitch. In your pitch, always talk about your best project first. Because here's what happens. You start talking about your project. That is the time the recruiter goes through your resume while listening to you. And if they think that, okay, I have something else in mind, they will start questioning you. But let's say if you speak about a weaker project first and you had this whole pitch going, but they interrupted you, you did not get to put your best foot forward. So ensure to start with your best projects. Another thing to mention is what did you do in that project? So now there are two things. One is the goal of the project. Another is what exactly you did. So for example, let's say the goal is, one of my projects was image stitching. So the goal was to be able to take these separate images and create it into a one panoramic image. So that is the goal. So, okay, this is what I wanted to do. The way I did it is by image stitching, where I would look at parts of the images, try to find a common intersection, and then stitched it. And then also talk about algorithms you might have used or languages you might have used. So for example, I did this with C++. So I would say that I coded all of this in C++. This is a great way to show what exactly skill you have. So for example, I see a lot of time people say, okay, I know Python, I know C++, I know Java, but I don't know how much you know. You may know Python, but you might be an expert in C++. I don't know that. So through your project, you can say that. When you say that you've worked on this project for 4 months and you've been using C++, then I know that, okay, this skill you are actually good at because you've used it. So make sure to mention what skills you used, what tools you used, programming languages. Another thing is, let's say you, in your pitch, you're including that I know Python, C++, don't just mention them, mention your level of expertise. So for example, you can say that I'm an expert in Python and an intermediary in C++, or an intermediary in Python and a beginner in C++, or, expert in both of those languages. But by saying that, they know what level of expert you are. It's not just about knowing, but how much you really know about that. Next, I wanted to mention some of the companies that are for robotics that I've seen in GHC in past. I don't know for sure that they will show up this time, but I know they've shown up in past. So I've seen open source AI, I've seen DeepMind, I've seen Tesla, I've seen Rockwell Automation, Path AI, Here Technologies, iRobot, Cruise Automation. So for those of you who don't know, Cruise Automation, I think was acquired by GM, or they're strongly funded by GM. They are an autonomous driving company, and I had a great interview with them. So definitely check that company out as well. And my last company, Brain Corporation, was also there. Now, in terms of big companies that also have smaller robotics team inside, or maybe a medium-sized robotics team in there, is Google, Qualcomm, HP, Facebook, Microsoft, and MathWorks. Another thing I want to mention is on your resume, make sure to include your GitHub links, your website. All of these things, they matter a lot. Also, the same goes for when you are preparing. So at the physical GHC, up until then, you used to walk up to the booth. Sometimes you were just handing in your resume. Sometimes they said that, okay, fill out this form on our iPad, and you would have to include links to your GitHub, LinkedIn, and it became a little tricky if you weren't prepared with all of these links already. So make sure you're prepared, and also to include them in your resume. A lot of softwares right now are smart enough to pick out those links and pre-fill it for you. So that will help. And also, in my personal experience, when I did one of my interviews, my interviewer had actually checked out my website through my form, and they already knew a lot of things about me. So when they came in, I didn't have to have the conversation, oh, tell me about yourself. They already knew everything about me. So then the conversation was about, hey, on your website, I saw this project and I had these questions. So they were already invested in me, and it definitely helped my case. Next, I want to talk about networking. As I mentioned before, networking can help you land your job. So after Qualcomm, the next company I ended up was also through networking. Networking helps you get an edge across other candidates because you're more likely to be called. Plus, when you go in, you already know someone. So you can ask them about things in terms of what to expect. So now here's another thing with networking. I see a lot of you all send messages on LinkedIn trying to connect with people. But number one mistake that people make is they don't add a personal note. Make sure to add a personal note. I'll talk about more in just a second. But after that, when you're talking to them, don't just talk about, hey, I'm looking for a full-time position. That doesn't work, because then they're like, oh, okay, this person's just interested in the job, and you will straight away get an answer, go apply at my company's website. They might not even link the website for you. They're like, just go apply on the website, because you're asking generic questions. So don't do that. Same goes for a networking event on Zoom or in person, whatever happens. So in my case, when I was talking to the person, I was just talking about me. I was talking about robotics, and then I was asking them, what are your interests, and so on and so forth. And the conversation went on for 20 minutes. After that, up until then, I hadn't even mentioned that I was looking for a full-time position. She mentioned it to me saying, hey, my team is looking to hire a robotics software engineer. Give me your resume. And then went to the interview recruiter and scheduled an interview for me. So don't just always start with, hey, I'm looking for a job. Yes, you should do that when you're talking to a recruiter at a career fair. But in networking, and even in LinkedIn, start with what you are, who you are, and what is it that you find as a common grounds between the two of you. So for example, when you go on LinkedIn, look at the person's profile. They've already put in the effort to fill everything in. Make sure you read it. Make sure you understand what project they've worked on. Find that common ground. Maybe both of you have worked on some computer vision projects, or maybe you worked on a project where a particular algorithm was applied and they have used that algorithm in the past. So make sure to find those connections and then send in that message. So when you send LinkedIn connection requests, add a personal note and include all of these common grounds in there. And the same goes for all the conversations that follow. That, hey, you know, I looked this on your profile. I know you've worked with this algorithm. What has your experience been like? So on and so forth. Another thing you can do is you can ask people for help with your job application. So instead of just asking for, hey, can you give me a referral to full-time position? You can ask, hey, can you review my resume? Now, this person is in your field. They're in the company you want to go to. So they know what people are looking for, what they're looking for in people. So when you give your resume for review, they can help you that, hey, these things don't matter and these things do. So for example, in robotics, I have seen a lot of people mention a lot about ROS and not about algorithms. Yes, ROS is important in robotics, but it is not the most important thing. It is way more important that you know algorithms. So for example, in path planning, A star, RRT star, depth first search, any of those. For computer vision, it could be image stitching, template matching, anything of that sort. Another example is with localization, you can talk about particle filtering approach. But talk about these algorithms, make sure you include that. Yes, you can also include ROS and gazebo, but don't make that the highlighting point. That is secondary. Primary is what algorithms do, Another thing you can do with LinkedIn is you can post content to draw attention to yourself. So on LinkedIn, you can just go and write a post. Now, things that help others, one is talk about your project. So let's say you've done a project, you made a nice video of it. Post that video, and in the description include what you did, what challenges you faced, how did you solve those challenges. Talk about all of those things, include hashtag robotics and all of those hashtags to bring attention to you and your content. Another thing that happens with this is, so let's say you're working on a project, you might not have completed it, you're working on it right now, and you faced some challenge. You're posting a question out there, and someone might help you. And through that help, now you made a connection with that person. So now it's no longer, hey, I know this person and they are on my LinkedIn network. It's you know this person because you've had this conversation with them. And so use those ways to connect with people. If you are introverted and you don't know how to talk, or you find it difficult to have conversation, use these means to have that conversation, make those connections. Another thing you can do is, let's say you attended some session on robotics and you found it very useful. So take notes of all the things that you found interesting and publish it on LinkedIn. So this way you are providing value to others, that hey, I attended this session and these are the learnings I got from there, and I'm sharing that. Now this has two benefits. One, you're providing value because you are sharing some of the key insights. Second, when you tag the excuse me, sorry about that. When you tag the speaker, you have a chance of showing up on their network. So let's say I'm a robotics software engineer and I gave a talk and you mentioned all of the key insights and valuable lessons, and you tagged me. So everyone who's on my network might see it. Not everyone might not see it, but some people might see it based on, however LinkedIn chooses to use its algorithm to show it to people. But now you have a chance to get more attention to you through this. But yes, don't use it in a negative sense. Don't put things that are not truly valuable and you're doing it for the heck of it. Post things that actually have value. You don't have to write a big summary. You can just write 3 key insights or one big lesson or one big takeaway for you through that session. So make sure you're actually putting value and not spamming. Okay, next I want to actually talk about what to do after you get an offer. So you went through the whole interviewing process, you maybe got more than one offer or you got one offer. So I want to talk about how do you decide and how do you negotiate. So in terms of deciding, even if you have just one offer, make sure to talk to the team. So now sometimes when you're being interviewed, you might be interviewed for the team, from the team, but sometimes you might be interviewed by other people, because recruiter might not know where they're going to place you for sure. They will have a mix of interviewers and they decide, okay, this is the team that I'm looking to hire for, and this candidate works well for my team or their team. So after you get your offer, make sure you talk to your actual team so you can understand what you will be doing. And that is the question, exactly the question you ask once you get connected to those people. Now you can connect with them two ways. One, you can ask your recruiter straight up that, hey, I want to talk to my team, or I want to talk to the head of my team. I've done that in the past, and they'll happily connect you. Or you can go on LinkedIn and find those people and send them a message that, hey, I have an offer from this company for your team. I'm looking to have a conversation. And then on that conversation, ask, so what does the typical day look like? What are the things that are expected of me? And then you can also ask things like, what is the biggest problem for the team right now? What can I do to help? So all of these questions help you gain insights onto what team is looking for. And you can use it in your negotiation as well. And I'll get to that in a minute. Another question to ask them is what mentorship looks like in that department or in that company. Another thing you can ask is how promotions work. So that way you get an insight into that, is this a company that promotes people further or not? This is also great when you're deciding amongst multiple offers. And another thing you can ask is, how does feedback work? So in some companies, it's a yearly feedback review. In some, it is 6 months. And then based on that, you get a percentage increase as a raise, not necessarily a promotion. You may get promotion in 3 years, but every year, based on your performance, you can get an increase on your base salary. So this is the information that you can ask these people. Another thing you can also ask is, what is the range of salary? Don't ask for a number directly. Some people might find it rude. You can still ask for a range. Now, here's what you can do for that as well. When you go to someone, like let's say you're going to be part of a company, team B. In that team, in that company, on LinkedIn, you can find someone who's higher up than you. For example, you are going to be hired as an entry level or software engineer 1. You can go to someone who's software engineer 2 or 3 or senior software engineer and message them and say, hey, I'm looking for an entry level position and I have X years of experience, or I'm a fresh graduate. So can you tell me, or what is the salary range that the company offers for this? Now, some people might answer, some people might not answer. So it's a tricky one, but you can definitely try. I've gotten answers sometimes I haven't gotten, but this is a great way to sort of get insights into what team is like. And then you can use all of this information in your negotiation. So when you get an offer from a company, a lot of people think that you need to have multiple offers and then use one offer at the other company and be like, hey, this company is offering me this much salary and these benefits, can you match or can you raise? And that works too. Yes, you can do that. But let's say if you just have one offer. So the way you would negotiate is with all of these insights. So for example, let's say through your conversation, you found out that one of the biggest problems for this team is working with LiDARs. And you have experience in that. So you can use this information when having a conversation with a recruiter that, yes, I am a fresh graduate, but given my experience in LiDAR and knowing that this is the biggest problem for the team right now, I bring value to the table. And you can use these points to be able to help raise your initial offer. Another thing I want to mention is, don't just focus on the base salary number. Yes, it matters. Like I mentioned before, you will get a percentage increase in all of your future salaries. So the base salary matters. But if they're non-negotiable on that, see if you can negotiate on other aspects. So for me, example, one of my job offers, they were not ready to budge on the base salary, but they were ready to budge on the benefits. So benefit could include stocks or stock options if the company has not gone public yet, sign up bonus, moving costs. So for one of the offers I had, they initially gave 4 days for moving cost, 4 days hotel stay, but I was able to negotiate it to 2 weeks. So you can also look into all these other benefits that can be negotiated. Another thing, after you have all this discussion, make sure to get it in writing. Do not say yes until you have everything in writing, because I've seen companies or recruiters do that, where they tell you something and then later they're like, oh, I don't remember having that conversation. Or maybe they were juggling with a lot of candidates and they got mixed up on what conversation they had with you. So make sure to get all of that in writing. One of the tricks that I have found useful, it actually came through a mentor of mine. You should make meeting notes at these discussions, and after that just send it over as an email being like, hey, these are the points we discussed. I just wanted to make sure that we are both on the same page. It is not rude to send that in, but it ensures that they know what you think you know. And it also gets this written confirmation from that, yes, that you're on the right track, no, you're not on the right track, or this is not what I thought we were offering, anything like that. Ensure you have it in writing before you say yes. Now, lastly, I want to talk about what you should be focusing right now, few days away from GHC. First, resume. Make sure you have a top-notch resume. Like I mentioned before, even if you've not applied to that company yet, you can go to someone who's in that company, in that team, and see if they can give you a resume review. And that could help you rearrange things or include keywords that are important to that team. Second, personal branding. This is the time people do look you up. I have had interviews where people have looked me up, they've seen my website, and they know exactly who I am. So make sure to be on the forefront of it. Make sure to go on LinkedIn and create a profile for yourself, or go on GitHub. GitHub has this easy way of creating a website. It's just one button, and then you can drop stuff in it like images and videos. So have all of that so you can build your personal brand as to, yes, I am interested in robotics, and these are the things I've worked with. Next thing, pitch. Make sure you have an elevator pitch to go. Practice it a couple of times so when time comes, you know exactly what you're going to be talking about. Now, another thing within the field of robotics that you can do is you can have these different pitches for different topics. So when I was a graduate, I didn't know exactly which way I wanted to go. There's localization, there's planning, there's navigation, there's computer vision, there's perception. So for me, I knew that either it's going to be perception and computer vision, or it's going to be path planning. So I had two pitches for both of them. So when I talk to a recruiter, or when I'm going to talk to a company and I know that this is the thing that they're focusing on, that's the pitch I'll talk about. I am, however, not an expert on pitch. So I actually have a session on September 5th with Shilpa Veer, who has been to GHC 5 times, and she's going to give a talk on how to perfect your elevator pitch. So if that's something that interests you, make sure to check it out. Next, coding challenges. This is extremely important. So when I started interviewing, I didn't know that what to expect, and that you'll have these coding challenges which are not in person. So there are two types of coding challenges that companies use to screen candidates. One is a timed one where they give you a questionnaire, and it's usually two questions, one easy, one medium, or one medium and one hard, depending on what position you're applying for. And then with that, you have just 30 minutes to solve those questions. So you have to really practice solving questions within the 30-minute time frame. When I started, I didn't know that. So I would be solving it and the time would run out, and I wouldn't have solved both the questions or not covered all of the test cases. So make sure to practice coding. Go to Lead Code, go to Interview Cake or Algorithm.io, all of these websites or any one of them, and practice coding. Now, here's what I mean by practice coding. Don't just solve it once. Make sure you know it. So go back to it after a few days and make sure that you can write that code within 10 minutes. So most of these codes, there are a lot of options that exist, but you will start to see a pattern after you practice them for a while. And then you can use those techniques across the coding challenges, and that will help you. Other resources that I wanted to mention within the field of robotics that will help you. One, RoboHub, check out their website. They have podcasts. It's more academia focused. However, it's still a great place to find out about jobs, find out about technologies, and find out about robotics in general. Second is Women in Robotics. They have a website. I think they're a part of RoboHub, but I'm not 100% sure. And they have an exclusive Slack channel, which is just Women Robotics Engineers. So make sure to check that out. That is a great way to network with people in your field. Lastly, I want to mention Robotics Worldwide listserv. So it's a listserv where you can sign up, and then I think every 1 or 2 days you get a digested email with all the emails that people have submitted. Now, this is a mixed bunch. It's not necessarily just one country. It's across the world. So you will see job offerings from Europe, US, and everywhere else. Also, it's a lot more academia focused. So you will see more things for PhD or postdoc and all of those. But there are still times when there are companies being mentioned and that they're looking for jobs. So make sure to check out this website to get that information.
Hey, Kajal.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of questions. One is around whether the recording is going to be available later on YouTube, on your channel, basically.
Yes, it is available. So even after the recording gets done, it'll take a few seconds for it to process, but then it'll be available publicly.
Okay, and then So the other question is the list of coding challenge websites. Can you do you mind repeating that? I can post it in the comments.
Yeah, sure. So one is Leet Code, LEET code. Second is, let's see, HackerRank, HackerRank. Third one is Interview Cake. So interview and then cake with CAKE. And all of these websites have questions and you can solve them on their server or you can solve them in person. One thing that I want to tell about Leet Code is once you submit a solution, they'll say that, okay, it took so much memory and took so much time. Don't focus on that because it's not accurate. It's better to do it on your own computer for timing and memory usage. But like, it doesn't really matter that you have the most efficient, but it matters that you don't have the least efficient. So for example, let's say finding prime numbers. So finding prime numbers, you can do it in tons of ways. You can have for loops that go through each number and then divide through all the previous numbers. Then that, takes n square. But you come up with a little better solution where you say, okay, only divide by all the prime numbers I've seen so far. You don't need to divide them with all the numbers. Or you come up with a strategy where, you eliminate all the even numbers and you only check for odd numbers. So all of these tiny, tiny things help you speed up. Now, the best solution for finding prime numbers is this method called a sieve of, I can't recall the name, but it basically means once you find a prime number, you go through all of their multiples and you remove them from the list. And this way, at the end, you're left with a list which is just prime numbers. So this is definitely the most efficient, but you're not expected to know the most efficient one, but somewhere in between. Like all of these methods that I mentioned, all of this is better than just doing one for loop with a nested for loop on finding prime numbers. So focus on trying to come up with a little better solution and not the most efficient solution. Most efficient will definitely give you an edge, but focus on how to make it better. And that kind of helps you learn all the algorithms.
So one more question before we proceed. So can you zoom into your coding practice for the technical interview? There are lots of problems and concepts to swim through, and how did you structure your study plan?
Sure. So one of the things that I used was looking at all the concepts that exist. So when people say coding challenges, you have to think data structures and algorithms. Data structures and algorithms, like those are the keywords. So when you look into data structures, you will find things like priority queues, linked list, hash map. So note down all of these concepts that exist and go through them one by one. Now, if you go to linked list, there'll be like thousands of questions. You don't have to do all of them, but you have to do some of them. And then you move on to the next topic. So for example, linked list questions include write a linked list, write a double-ended linked list. I'm giving you two sets of linked list. Can you co-join them? I'm giving you two sets of linked list. Can you co-join them in an alternative manner? Or, can you add both of them and make sure it's in a serialized format? So these are some of the basic questions. And once you get through them, you kind of get an idea of how to do it. So the rest of them will become a little easier. So that is how I structured. I list down all the topics in data structures and algorithms. So algorithms include depth first search, breadth first search. Then it includes, let's see, particle filter. What else is greedy algorithms? So all of these concepts, check them out. So list all of these concepts, pick up any data structure and algorithms book. Like the content list is essentially all the topics. Pick one topic, study a little bit about it, do 10 coding challenges, move on to the next topic, and so on and so forth. That was what I used to do for the first practice session. And then I used to also look at random coding challenges on Leet Code and Hacker Rank and so on and so forth. So kind of a mix of that. Next question.
No, I think we're good for now.
Okay, so that's all I had for now. Any questions anyone wants to ask, feel free. Also, another thing, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and I am happy to answer questions. I do sometimes get a lot of messages, so it might take a while before I respond, but I try my best to answer all of them.
All right. We can maybe wait like half a minute if anyone is wanting to post any questions.
Sure.
All right, I think we are good. So if there are no more questions, oh, there is a question. How long did it take you before you felt ready with your preparation?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. It took time. So let's see. At least 6 to 7 months, I would say. It's not something you can do in a month and be good at, because trust me, data structure and algorithms has a lot of concepts in them, and it is difficult to get to that level where you can do it by default. Now, when I say 6 months, I say 2 hours every day. But if you invest more time, then it becomes a little quicker. Also, there are a lot of YouTube channels which break down the concepts for you. So let's say you solve a lead code question. So let me give you an example. Let's say there are two lists and you have to co-join them. Now you go Google how to do that. And then the next time the question is, how do you do it if there are three lists? So those same concepts can be applied. The same goes for, okay, here's a question where you're given a list of numbers and you have to find two numbers and the sum of these two numbers should be equal to X. Now, this same concept can be applied if you were asked to pick three numbers from the list, no duplicates, and the sum should be the given number. So the concept still follows. There might be little tricks and tips on how it will affect differently. So when you solve it, figure out how to do it for two, go check it out on YouTube and someone will give you 3-4 different methods of solving this. And then when you have that in the back of your head, when you try to do the 3-1, you try all of those approaches and see which one works best. Another thing, make sure you know how to compute big O. So big O is basically how much time your code takes. And that is a good way to figure out how efficient your code is. So make sure you know that and also mention that in your interviews. So the coding challenge is fine, but in person, people will expect you to know what the big O is, and they may ask you to compute it as well. So make sure you learn that as a concept as well.
That's a good one. This is not a question from our listeners or viewers, I guess. This is my question. So you said like 6 months, right? You started preparing. Did you have any specific list of companies that you were targeting, and in terms of like preparing for the interviews or your personal branding, did you have any of that in mind already, or your kind of target was I want to get a robotics engineer role?
I didn't have a specific company in mind, but I knew that I wanted to be in the field of robotics. And within that subfield, I knew that the areas that interest me is perception and computer vision and path planning. So those were the things that I focused on most. And that's why, even though my website had a few other topics, but I made sure that these two pop out the most. And that is where my branding is. Even right now, when people ask me, what is your interest? I often say perception. That is the area that I enjoy more right now compared to all other areas of robotics. So, I mean, it's not always necessary that you know it from the start, but don't give a generic answer saying that, oh, everything in robotics interests me. Make sure you have at least 2-3 subfields that interest you more or slightly right now that you can use. And then you can always switch between them. Or, you do it for a year and you realize, no, this is not my area. You can switch, that's fine. But even when you're interviewing and they ask you what in robotics, make sure you know something. You can give them something. Don't say generic. It looks bad. It looks like you're not prepared and you don't know what you want.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, there are like few more questions coming in now. So next one is, I have difficulties with elevator pitches. Is there any alternative that you can recommend?
All right. So one thing I'm going to say is elevator pitches matter a lot, because that is the first impression you're going to put. But if you stumble through it, just keep going. That's the thing. When I started initially, I didn't exactly know what my pitch should be. So it would mess up, and you can read the other person's expression, right? You can figure out that this is not working. I just quickly move on to the next thing and start talking about my first project. So you still have time to win them over. Just make sure to keep going. Another thing, if you're having really difficulty with, giving your elevator pitch or preparing one, just make sure to include some common things that people are looking for. So especially at career fairs, right? When you go the company and you give it to a recruiter, now this recruiter is hiring for 10 roles or 20 roles. If you don't start with what you want, they don't know where to put you. So include things like name, you're a student or a professional, what university you are studying at, or what company you are working at right now, what kind of roles you're looking for. So internship, co-op, full-time. And also include things like, hey, I'm going to graduate in December 2020, or I'm going to graduate in May 2021. Again, these things, this little bits of information are very critical to the recruiter at the start, so they know where to place you and what kind of things to include. So from my company, when I went, I knew we had those symbols for, okay, these are the piles who we can hire in December. So roles that were opening from December, those resumes went there. People for positions that were from May 21, when someone told me I'm going to graduate in May 2021, the resume went there. So make sure to include those things in your elevator pitch, even if you're not able to say something that could, wow or impress the people. So if nothing, go to the basics and then just go on to your first project.
All right. So the next one is, what was your role at Qualcomm and how was the interview process?
All right. So for Qualcomm, it was a long interview process. I first did an interview at GHC with one person. Then I had a Skype call with two people. Then I was flown in, and it was a day long. I think there were almost 4 to 5 interviews, including a lunch interview. Now, this one was something I had not experienced before. That, yes, you will have formal interviews where you are with a whiteboard and you're solving coding challenges, but you'll also have a lunch interview where you're trying to sell your personality and your traits. So make sure to prepare for that as well. And then another thing that happened after that, then I got an offer, and then I called them and said, okay, I know you made me interview for 3 teams. The one that is the offer with, can I speak to their head? And that way I was able to gather more information. Another thing, I was asked a lot of linked list questions. I would ask a lot of, this is one question with the islands. So you're given a grid of numbers and you're supposed to group them into islands. It's called a island problem. Check it out. Those were some of the questions I was asked. Then I was also asked basic questions as to how to write a for loop, how to write classes. And, sometimes there were questions where you were given a code and you had to find out what is wrong, or you had to find out that what will this statement print. This especially happens with classes. There'll be lots of inheritance and pairing up of classes into the inherited classes, and then you'll be asked the question of, okay, if I print this object, what will I get? Sometimes you will get an error because you're not supposed to do that. The member was protected, or sometimes it was changed in the inherited one, but because of the way the pointer is, what was called will make a difference. So that was an interesting set of questions. Another set of questions I got was logical. I didn't have to necessarily write the code, but I had to talk about how to solve that problem. So the one that I remember right now is, I was given a string of zeros and ones, and I had to come up with what the number is and then flip it. So that is some logical question that's asked, but you don't necessarily have to write the code. So all of these questions come, prepare for all of them. When you're preparing, keep another thing in mind, that when you are at the interview and you're talking about the questions and you're solving it, it's not someone gave you a question, you looked at it, you thought about it, you wrote the code, and then you're like, voila, this is the code. No, that is number one mistake that people make. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to think out loud. So when you're thinking of solutions, say it out loud. Because when people are interviewing, they don't want to know if you know the correct answer or not. They want to know how you're coming to that answer. So if you just put the final one, they don't know how you think. So they don't know if you can go to a difficult problem and be able to break it down and solve it. So talk out loud when you go through your solutions. You can also say that, okay, one option is brute force. So going back to the example of prime numbers, you can say, so one obvious answer to this is the brute force approach. You pick a number. If it's 1, it's prime straight away. Then you pick 2 and then you divide by 1. Okay, not, I mean, 2 is also, 2 is even number. Okay, so 1 and 2 you can exclude. 3, okay, you divide by 1 and 2, it is not going to be divisible, so 3 is a prime number. You go to 4, you divide by everything. Oh, it's divided by 2, so it's not a prime number, it's a composite number. So that is the brute force approach. So you start with that and then you say, but this will take a lot of time. So one thing we can do is we can eliminate all the even numbers and only focus on the odd numbers. That will help speed up our program by like half, because half the numbers are gone. Then go into another solution, so on and so forth. So think those thoughts out loud so they understand how you're thinking and how you're able to pick out those small things and come up with a better solution.
Okay, we have questions coming. So next one is, what kind of projects would add value to the resume for a software engineer? I think that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good question. I can only talk about robotics because that is my field. I don't know about generic software. Okay, let's see. For generic software, you can go with games that are really impressive and it doesn't require a lot. I don't know how it works in C++, but in Python, you can use matplotlib to easily visualize everything. So you can even make something as simple as a tic-tac-toe game or a game where you're supposed to shoot birds or something and count the number of points based on how accurately or how many birds you shot down. So things like that is good. Another benefit with this is you're able to create a visualized effect. So you can make this video game, you play it and you record the video of you playing it and then you put it out there. So then you can show that, okay, I made this game. But like, imagine if you had to describe what your game does versus show a video where your game is working. Like the impact is huge. So try that for software engineering roles. For robotics software engineering, things I did, you can try that. So for example, in path planning, what I did was I wrote, there's this classic problem called the classic piano movers problem. Check it out. It's essentially a piano that you have to move through the maze. Now, the tricky part here is it's the shape of the piano. It's not a dot that's moving. It's a rectangle that is moving. So some of the path, even though a dot can go through, the piano will not go through. So that is a good problem to solve. And what I did was I compared it with A star and RRT star. So I did both of these. I put a comparison. I made a video where both of these are being plotted as it's being detected. So with matplotlib, I was able to show how it's looking for those path points and how that entire path was formed. And once the path was formed, I show the piano moving through that path. It's pretty simple. It takes a little bit of effort to understand how to do it, but there are a lot of tutorials online. Check it out. So those are some good projects for robotics. Others I'll just mention, not go so much in detail. So that was path planning. Another one is particle filter for localization. For computer vision, you can look into image stitching, texture recognition, identifying an object. I did a project called Where is Waldo, where I was looking for Waldo through template matching. It was again a game that is done by kids. Like you have this image of a crowded beach with a bunch of people and you're supposed to find this one specific cartoon character. It's a great project for computer vision. Like you just took a game and you made it virtual, and again, great visualization. Once you detect the Waldo, you can make like a nice red square being like, in this image, here's the cartoon character Waldo. So try projects like that.
Okay, we're almost coming on time. So let's see, what's the next one? Could you share a few SLAM questions you usually came across in your interviews?
Interestingly, I did not come across any SLAM questions. I don't know how. The questions I was often asked, which surprised me, were questions on how to deal with sensor noise. Now, this is one real problem that exists in robotics that you don't recognize or realize when you are a student. And I realized it through my interviews. I was asked about those questions, and then when I started working, I realized, okay, you got a sensor. It's not just about plotting it and everything goes fine. There is a lot of sensor noise. So you have to think about filtering techniques, And that is a great question that might come up, or you can prepare for, to how to deal with LiDAR sensor noise, or how to deal with time of flight camera noise. So here's how this question can sometimes come. Let's say you had a project where you're using a turtle bot with a LiDAR and you were moving around the room. That was the project I did. So then you will be asked the question, okay, how did you deal with the LiDAR noise? So that is an unexpected question. I never got asked about SLAM, but sensor noise. Check that out.
All right, next one is, I have done a project in ROS this summer as part of my internship. Can I apply for robotics related job? Oh, ROS and Gazebo.
Oh, great. Yeah. So ROS and Gazebo, for those of you who don't know, ROS is essentially a communication network. A lot of companies use it. A lot of sensor companies use it, transmit the sensor noise through ROS node, and then you have to create a ROS node to gather information. Absolutely, you can do it. And you mentioned you worked with Gazebo. Gazebo is a simulator, so you can create a video of the work you did and use it to get an entry-level job into robotics. However, I would mention this, that don't focus just on the fact that you used ROS and Gazebo. Totally mention it, but focus on what you did. So for example, with Gazebo and ROS, let's say you had a turtle bot or another differential drive robot or a U2 robot, and what you did with that. So did you make it drive around in circles? Was it a line following? Or, if it was a robotic arm, was it pick in place, or was it to draw something? What did you do? That should be the focus. What algorithms you use to achieve that goal, that should be the focus. Okay, I think we can do one more question.
Yeah, I think this is the last one. So for your interest in robotics, particularly in computer vision and perception, did you have to have a lot of background in linear algebra, mathematics, and physics? Yeah, I think I would like to know as well.
That's a very interesting question. I don't think you need a background in that. The time when it comes to play is when there are some specific goals to be achieved, or some specific mathematical equation that you can use to do a task faster. That is where math comes in, but it's not super important in my opinion. I know there will be people who say that you need to know math and algebra and physics. I don't think so. I mean, I used to love math, so I have a good background in math, but there has never been a problem which I was not able to solve because I didn't know math. It just helps you make your code faster. But then you don't have to necessarily know it. You can learn it from others, or you can Google it. People think that once you get into a company, you're supposed to know everything. No, everyone Googles everything. Let's say I've been given a task of driving a robot in circles, or detect particular things such as okay, let me take self-driving example, right? So a good example is you have to detect the crosswalks and stop accordingly. You can Google it, like what are the best approaches, learn some of that, and then apply that. You don't necessarily have to know all the answers. So now if someone gave me that problem, the first thing I would think is template matching, but that might not be the good solution. Another thing is, a lot of people focus on machine learning such as CNN and RCC and all of those. You don't necessarily have to do it all the time. So one of the biggest problems with machine learning is it doesn't accommodate all of the things. You need a lot of data to get started with. You need a lot of labeled data to get started with. And those are some challenges you face. So yes, you can say that that is one method that you know of and that's how you would do it. But then at the same time, you can Google and see what other better approaches are there and then implement them, study them. There are, research papers which talk about algorithms. Read it, understand it, and then apply. I know people do that in the industry now, so you don't have to know everything.
So basically, Google is still your best friend, even if you get into a job. I mean, I'm not a software engineer. I'm a business analyst, but I have like over 10 years of experience, and I still Google stuff. So I agree with you 100% on that. All right, we are actually right on time. I don't see there are any more questions, but yeah, there people are leaving thank you notes for you, Kajal. So thank you.
I'm sorry, guys, about the technical problems in the start. And if I missed out on some points and you didn't understand, feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. That's the best way to get in touch with me. And I do try and respond to most of them. So yeah, reach out for help. And thank you so much for coming. And I hope I can help you in getting a dream job at GHC.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Bye.